SilverHawks, a rainbow in the night.
Listen up, because in 1986, there was a cartoon that was supposed to be the next ThunderCats. It had chrome-plated heroes, space battles, and a villain so metal, he literally transformed into metal. The toys were flying off shelves, the animation was slick, and then it just vanished. But here's the thing. The reason this cartoon crashed and burned had nothing to do with the quality of the show. I'm talking about SilverHawks. And if you grew up in the 80s, you either remember these partly metal, partly real space cops fondly, or you're wondering why the heck they disappeared after just one season, while ThunderCats got 4. Well, in this video, I'm going to reveal the real story behind SilverHawks' spectacular rise and catastrophic fall. We're talking about a show that did everything right. Same voice actors as ThunderCats. Same animation studio. Same composer. And still got canceled faster than you could say, Tallyhawk. And trust me, when you hear what actually killed this franchise, you're going to be shocked. Because it wasn't bad ratings. It wasn't poor quality. It was something way more brutal. A business decision so boneheaded that it basically murdered what could have been one of the biggest toy franchises of the decade. So stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why your SilverHawks action figures are now worth hundreds of dollars on eBay, and why this show deserves way more respect than it gets. Part 1. The setup. The Rankin Bass machine. Alright, let's set the stage. It's 1985, and Rankin Bass Productions, the same folks who gave us those stop-motion Christmas specials, just struck absolute gold with ThunderCats. We're talking massive ratings, toys selling like crazy, kids everywhere running around yelling,
ThunderCats!
Now, here's what you need to understand about the mid-80s. The FCC had just deregulated children's television. And what that meant was that toy companies could finally market their products directly during cartoon programming. This created this insane feedback loop where cartoons sold toys, and toys funded more cartoons. It was basically a license to print money. So Rankin and Bass looks at ThunderCats' success and thinks, why stop at one? They had this brilliant production pipeline set up with Pacific Animation Corporation in Japan, which, by the way, was staffed by former Topcraft employees who would later form Walt Disney Animation Japan. These guys were legit. And here's where it gets interesting. Rankin Bass decided to create SilverHawks as basically ThunderCats in space. Same formula, different setting. Instead of cat people with swords, you'd get cyborg space cops with metal wings. Instead of Mumra, you'd get Mon Star. Instead of Third Earth, you'd get the Limbo galaxy. But here's the kicker. They kept the dream team together. Larry Kinney, Peter Newman, Bob McFadden, all the voice actors from ThunderCats came back. Bernard Hoffer, who composed that iconic ThunderCats theme, returned to create another rock and roll infused soundtrack. Even the animation director, Masaki Iizuka, was the same guy. This wasn't some cheap cash grab. This was Rankin and Bass saying, we know exactly what works and we're going to do it again. Now let's talk about the actual show, because SilverHawks was genuinely cool. The premise was simple, but effective. Commander Stargazer recruits this team of volunteers to become partly metal, partly real cyborg enforcers. They get these incredible transformations where they're basically rebuilt with metal components, wings, and all this advanced tech. Their mission? Stop Mon Star and his gang of space criminals terrorizing the Limbo galaxy. And Mon Star wasn't just some generic bad guy. This dude would transform from this weak imprisoned alien into this massive chrome-plated powerhouse by absorbing the light from the Moonstar. That transformation sequence was legitimately intimidating for a kids show. The heroes were great too. You had Quicksilver, the leader with his twin brother Tallyhawk, a metal bird companion. Bluegrass, the cowboy pilot with his guitar and his sidekick Sidemen. Copper Kid, the young hotshot with his bird Mayday. The Steelheart twins. And later they added more characters like Condor and Moonstriker. But here's what really set SilverHawks apart from other 80s cartoons. The space setting actually worked in its favor. The animation team used the stark blackness of space and all these chrome designs to create this really striking visual aesthetic. Critics at the time, and even today, rate the animation quality higher than a lot of contemporary shows. One reviewer gave the writing and storyline an 8.5 out of 10, which for an 80s toy commercial cartoon is pretty damn impressive. The show had this unique look where everything was shiny and metallic, and against the black void of space, it just popped. It looked expensive. It looked premium. And for kids watching on their tube TVs in 1986, it was absolutely mesmerizing. Now here's where we need to talk about the business side, because this is where the whole thing starts to go sideways. In the 80s, syndicated cartoons lived and died by one magic number, 65 episodes. Why 65? Because that's exactly how many episodes you needed for strip programming, meaning local TV stations could air your show 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, for 13 straight weeks. That's one full quarter of programming, and then they'd just loop it again. So Rankin and Bass committed to producing all 65 episodes of SilverHawks in one massive production run. We're talking about an estimated $15 million investment, the same kind of money they spent on ThunderCats' first season. This wasn't a test run. This was all in from day one, and they cranked these episodes out fast. The entire 65 episode run aired between September 8th and December 5th, 1986. That's right, 12 weeks. They burned through the entire series in just 3 months. Now, on paper, this seems smart, right? Get all your episodes done, get them on TV, start selling toys. But here's the problem. This model was basically a commercial guillotine. Once you've aired all 65 episodes, you've exhausted all your fresh content. And if the show doesn't become an absolute phenomenon, like He-Man or Transformers level, there's no financial incentive to order another 65 episodes at that massive production cost. You're basically betting everything on one hand of poker. And if you don't win big immediately, you're done. Part 2, the fatal mistake, the toy line disaster. Alright, here's where everything falls apart, and this is the part that's going to make you angry because it was so preventable. Remember, these cartoons existed for one reason, to sell toys. The show was basically a 22-minute commercial, so the toy line was absolutely critical to the franchise's survival. Now initially, LJN was supposed to make the SilverHawks toys. LJN had just crushed it with the ThunderCats toy line. We're talking massive sales, huge success. They knew the Rankin Bass formula. They had the distribution. They had everything set up. And then, at the last minute, LJN passed on SilverHawks. Nobody knows exactly why, but the smart money says they either thought the chrome designs would be too expensive to produce, or they were worried about cannibalizing their own ThunderCats sales. Either way, Rankin Bass had to scramble and find a new partner. Enter Kenner. Now, Kenner was a solid toy company. They made Star Wars figures, for crying out loud. But here's the problem. They weren't ready. The deal happened late. Production took time, and this created a catastrophic timing gap. Remember how I said the entire TV series aired from September to December 1986? Well, the Kenner toy line didn't hit stores until 1987. Let that sink in. The show finished airing in December 1986. The toys showed up in stores in 1987. By the time kids could actually buy SilverHawks action figures, there were no new episodes to watch. The daily promotional push was over. The media momentum was dead. And here's the brutal truth. The toys actually sold well at first. There was residual interest from the show. Kids wanted them. But then sales began to quickly slow down because there was no media support. No new episodes. No Saturday morning excitement. Just reruns. Now, let's talk about the toys themselves, because they were actually really cool, which makes this whole story even more tragic. Kenner modeled the SilverHawks figures after their successful Superpowers collection line. The figures were about 4 to 5 inches tall, and they had this leg-squeezing action feature that would make their arms move or wings flap. Each hero came with their bird companion, Tallyhawk, Sideman, Mayday, all of them. But the real standout feature was the chrome finish. Kenner used vacuum metallized plating to give these figures that shiny, metallic look in different colors. Silver, copper, gold, blue. They looked incredible on the shelf. They really captured that partly metal, partly real aesthetic from the show. However, and this is important, that chrome finish had problems. It was very susceptible to wear. Kids playing with these toys would see the chrome rub off pretty quickly. And compared to the more durable plastic figures from competitors, SilverHawks toys just didn't hold up as well. Plus, all those features, the chrome plating, the bird accessories, the action mechanisms, made them more expensive to produce. Higher production costs meant higher retail prices, which meant tighter profit margins. Kenner released 2 waves of figures. Series 1 in 1987 had the core team. Series 2 in 1988 had additional characters like Condor. But by 1988, sales were in steep decline. The 1988 catalog showed all these planned vehicles and playsets that never made it to production. The Copper Racer, the ultrasonic Quicksilver variant, all canceled. And then came the final nail in the coffin, the Hawk Haven Fortress. The Hawk Haven Fortress was supposed to be the centerpiece of the SilverHawks toy line. This was the hero's headquarters that appeared in every single episode of the show. It was supposed to have a gunner station, a jail cell, a moving elevator, all the bells and whistles. This was going to be the big ticket item, the thing that parents bought for Christmas or birthdays, the anchor that would keep the toy line alive, and Kenner canceled it. The official reason? High production costs. But here's what that really means. Kenner looked at their sales projections and realized they couldn't justify the expensive molds and tooling required for a large playset. The sales weren't there. The momentum was gone. When you cancel the central location of your entire franchise, the place where all the action happens in the show, you're basically admitting defeat. You're saying, we don't believe this line has a future, and they were right. By 1988, the SilverHawks toy line was dead. Part 3, the brutal truth. So let's break down exactly why SilverHawks failed, because it's actually a perfect storm of structural problems. First, the 65-episode model was a trap. It demanded massive upfront investment with minimal runway for success. You had to become a phenomenon in 3 months, or you were done. There was no room for slow growth, no room for building an audience. It was go viral or go home. Second, the 6-month gap between the show ending and the toys launching was absolutely fatal. In the 80s, the synergy between media and merchandise was everything. Kids watched the show, got excited, and then begged their parents for the toys. But if the show's already over when the toys arrive, that excitement has evaporated. You've broken the feedback loop. Third, the high production costs of the chrome figures combined with durability issues meant the toys were expensive to make, but didn't last long in kids' hands. That's a terrible combination for a toy line trying to build momentum. And fourth, and this is the one nobody talks about, SilverHawks was competing in the most saturated market in cartoon history. 1986 was the absolute peak of the syndicated action cartoon boom. You had He-Man, Transformers, G.I. Joe, ThunderCats, and dozens of others all fighting for the same audience and the same shelf space. SilverHawks was good, really good actually, but good wasn't enough. You needed to be a cultural phenomenon. You needed to capture the zeitgeist. And while SilverHawks had a loyal fanbase, it never achieved that critical mass. The concept of cyborg space police was cool, but it was more niche than the universal appeal of humanoid cat warriors. ThunderCats tapped into mythology and fantasy tropes that resonated with everyone. SilverHawks was more cerebral, more sci-fi, more specific. Now here's the twist. SilverHawks' commercial failure actually created something valuable, a collector's market. Because the toy line was canceled so quickly, minifigures were produced in limited quantities. Series 2 figures especially are rare. And all those planned vehicles and playsets that never got made? That scarcity drives prices through the roof. Today, a carded Series 1 Copper Kid figure with Mayday can sell for $325 to $450. Bluegrass with Sidemen, $225 to $325. A Series 2 Condor figure, $215 to $295. These aren't just toys anymore, they're investments. And the IP itself has endured. Warner Brothers owns the rights now, and the show still has a dedicated cult following. In 2025, it's airing on MeTV Toons. Dynamite Entertainment just launched a new comic series in January 2025, following their successful ThunderCats reboot. The Nacelle Company is developing a new animated series. The modern strategy is smart. Instead of trying to recapture mass market success, they're targeting the nostalgic adult fan base with premium collectibles and mature storytelling. Companies like Super 7 are releasing high-end figures, including characters that Kenner never made, like Mon Star's pre-transformation mode. The new Dynamite comic series has a darker, more sophisticated tone. Writer Ed Brisson isn't afraid to tackle the body horror aspects of the cyborg concept. There's a line in the new comics describing a hero as half metal, half arthritis, which is both funny and kind of profound when you think about these characters aging. Part 4. The Lesson. So what's the takeaway here? SilverHawks failed, not because it was bad, but because the business model was fundamentally broken. The 65-episode syndication model was designed for instant hits, not sustainable franchises. The disconnect between media and merchandise killed the momentum, and the oversaturated market left no room for error. But here's the thing. The show itself was great. The animation was top-notch. The voice acting was excellent. The concept was solid. And the fans who loved it still love it today. SilverHawks is a reminder that in the entertainment industry, quality doesn't always equal success. Timing matters. Distribution matters. Business decisions matter. Sometimes a great show fails not because of what's on screen, but because of what's happening in boardrooms and on store shelves. And honestly, that makes the story even more interesting. Because SilverHawks deserved better. It deserved the same chance ThunderCats got. It deserved to have its toys in stores while the show was on the air. It deserved to build its audience over multiple seasons. Instead, it became a cautionary tale about the brutal economics of 80s children's television. But for those of us who remember it, who had those chrome figures, who watched Quicksilver and his team battle Mon Star in the Limbo galaxy, SilverHawks will always be more than just a failed franchise. It'll always be that cool space cartoon that could have been huge. Thanks for watching, guys. But here's the thing. Everything I just told you about SilverHawks, the same thing happened to dozens of other 80s cartoons. So, if you want to understand why your childhood favorites succeeded or failed, check out my video right here, where I break down the entire 80s cartoon boom and bust. And if you're feeling nostalgic, drop a comment and let me know. Did you have SilverHawks toys? Do you still have them? Because if you do, you might be sitting on a gold mine. Alright, I'll see you in the next one.